Hey, it's Patrick coming to you from Vancouver on this Friday edition of Tesla Shorts Time Daily, episode 439. It's April 17th, 2026. Let's sit down for a few minutes and catch you up on what actually moved the needle this week before we head into the weekend. There's a nice mix of near-term progress, long-term vision stuff, and some honest reality checks in the mix today. Here's what's making news in the Tesla world. First up, Tesla didn't sit around after finally getting full self-driving supervised approved in the Netherlands. Within a week, they were already pushing out free trials to local owners. The goal is pretty straightforward. They want real European drivers putting miles on the system so the team can gather feedback specific to those narrower roads, different signage, and the way traffic actually flows over there. It's also a smart way to build some genuine excitement and familiarity before the feature eventually flips over to paid. From a business standpoint, this feels like a pragmatic move to start cracking a market that has been waiting quite a while for meaningful autonomy progress. Regulatory approval is one thing, but turning that approval into actual usage and usable data is what really matters next. This shows Tesla adapting their rollout strategy to local realities rather than forcing a one-size-fits-all approach they've sometimes been accused of in the past. Europe has always been a bit of a tougher nut for them on the regulatory side, so seeing them move quickly once the door cracked open feels like a mature evolution in how they bring features to different continents. I'm curious to see what kind of unique edge cases the Dutch owners surface that maybe California or Texas drives don't. While that autonomy news is exciting, a lot of owners are getting some more immediate, tangible improvements through the latest software drop. The 2026.14.1 update just had its release notes published, and it's one of those classic Tesla packages that quietly makes the car feel noticeably better in day-to-day life. It brings a new self-driving app, Hey Grok voice activation, upgrades to the immersive sound system, meaningful improvements to pet mode, and those blind spot warning lights that now illuminate right on the mirrors instead of just the screen. Music queuing is smarter now, and there's even a new sketchpad feature added for whoever wants to doodle on the big screen while waiting somewhere. None of these changes are revolutionary on their own. Yet when you put them all together, they reinforce how Tesla keeps treating the car like a device that can feel fresher and more capable over time through over-the-air updates. Owners continue to see their existing vehicles gain new capabilities without having to buy anything new. That steady stream of polish really adds to the long-term product experience and helps justify the upfront investment for a lot of people who wonder if they're paying a premium today for tech that will keep paying them back for years. What strikes me is how this approach still sets them apart. While other manufacturers tend to tie new features to the next model year or a paid hardware upgrade, Tesla's willingness to keep refreshing older cars builds a different kind of loyalty. It turns the vehicle into something closer to a phone that gets better instead of an appliance that slowly gets outdated. That constant polishing is part of the bigger picture Tesla painted in a new teaser video that dropped this week. The video positions right now as the golden era of transportation. It focuses heavily on robo-taxis, the cybercab, and the longer-term possibility of gradually shifting away from traditional car ownership for a lot of people. The tone is classic ambitious Tesla, pointing to where the technology could eventually lead us all if the pieces fall into place. The exact timeline remains the big open question, as it always does with these kinds of visions. Even so, it serves as a reminder that the company is still thinking well beyond simply selling more vehicles in the near term. This kind of forward-looking messaging keeps the broader industry conversation moving, even when day-to-day execution hits the inevitable hurdles. I find it interesting because it shows they haven't backed away from the grander ambition, even as they grind through the supervised full self-driving phase. It's easy to get caught up in the quarterly delivery numbers or the latest software delay, but these videos are Tesla's way of saying the real prize is still further down the road. Whether that creates helpful inspiration or just adds more pressure is something only time will tell. That future-focused optimism sits in contrast to some more grounded realities we're seeing right now with the Cybertruck. Reports show that Musk's companies, particularly SpaceX, accounted for roughly 1 in 5 Cybertrucks registered in the fourth quarter of 2025. Internal support of this scale makes sense in the early days when you're still ramping production and working out the kinks. But it cannot last forever if the truck is going to prove itself with regular customers outside that circle. It raises fair questions about the level of organic demand right now. Broadening appeal will likely require more than just internal volume to build real momentum in the market. This is an honest reality check on how product success ultimately gets measured over time. The The Cybertruck generates enormous attention wherever it goes, yet turning that attention into widespread purchases by people who don't work at one of Elon's companies is the next real test. I think it's healthy to acknowledge this without panic. Early adopters and employees have always played an outsized role in Tesla launches, but the truck's long-term success depends on whether it can cross over to contractors, families, and enthusiasts who simply want a capable electric pickup. We're still in that awkward adolescent phase where the numbers can look impressive, but the foundation needs to broaden. Speaking of product gaps, there are fresh hints that Tesla may be working on something more family-oriented. The company appears to be hinting at a new family-focused electric vehicle that could blend some of that Cybertruck styling with more practical size and seating configurations. If it materializes, this would fill a noticeable gap in their current lineup. Many families like the bold look but need something better suited to everyday hauling, car seats, and passenger needs without going full three-row SUV. It makes sense from a product strategy view to round out the range this way. Right now, the lineup jumps from the Model Y to the much larger and more expensive Cybertruck in certain markets, leaving some buyers stuck in the middle. A vehicle that keeps the futuristic edges but adds easier access, more interior flexibility, and perhaps a slightly smaller footprint could bring in an entirely new group of customers who have been waiting for Tesla to speak their language. I'm thoughtful about this one because product expansion has always been one of their harder challenges. Getting the pricing, range, and production efficiency right on a new body style is never simple, but the payoff could be substantial if they land it. While we wait on that, Tesla's existing lineup is still winning in some interesting international markets. Chinese-made electric vehicles are gaining real traction in South Korea's imported vehicle market, and Tesla models are leading the pack there. It demonstrates that strong range, advanced technology, and brand strength can cut through geopolitical tension. This performance helps offset softer spots in other regions for the company. It also shows genuine global pull for their vehicles, even in competitive Asian markets where local manufacturers are strong. Success like this reminds us that customer priorities often matter more than headlines about trade relations. South Korea has always been a discerning market that values quality and innovation. So seeing Tesla hold the top spot among imports says something meaningful about how the cars are actually perceived once people drive them. It's one of those data points that doesn't get as much attention as the big markets, but probably deserves more. On the other hand, the whole industry is sounding a bit quieter lately. There is a noticeable pause in new electric vehicle reveals and future product teases across manufacturers. This includes Tesla as well. Some are calling it the Trump slump, pointing to policy uncertainty and shifting political winds as the cause. For Tesla, this quiet period stands out because they have historically used announcements to maintain momentum and keep the conversation focused on their roadmap. It will be worth watching whether this is temporary caution or something more lasting in the business environment. When the entire sector slows its messaging at the same time, it can create a vacuum that makes consumers hesitate. Tesla has usually thrived in chaos by doubling down on bold claims, so seeing them take a breath here is notable. I think it reflects a more mature approach to managing expectations in a world where actual execution on manufacturing scale and regulatory approval matters more than ever. While the daily news cycle focuses on products and policy, it's worth stepping back to understand what's actually happening inside the battery cells that power all of this. Battery chemistry is one of those fundamental topics that doesn't get discussed enough outside of engineering circles. Yet the choices made here directly shape range, cost, safety, longevity, and which markets a vehicle fits best. Early lithium-ion batteries in cars were mostly variations of nickel, manganese, cobalt. This chemistry delivers strong energy density for decent range without needing an enormous pack. The trade-off is higher cost because nickel and cobalt are expensive with volatile supply chains. Thermal stability also requires careful management to avoid overheating risks. Many Western manufacturers leaned on this approach for years to match customer expectations around performance and range. Then the industry saw a big shift toward lithium iron phosphate. This option trades some energy density for big gains in cost, safety, and cycle life. It runs cooler, resists degradation over thousands of charges, and uses abundant materials that are easier to source. China embraced this chemistry early because it fit their focus on affordable urban mobility and local supply chains. Their makers could deliver reliable range for daily use at prices that undercut competitors. The perspective there is pragmatic, emphasizing total cost of ownership over chasing maximum range on every single vehicle. Tesla took its own path by pushing the 4680 cell format. These larger cells reduce manufacturing complexity and improve energy flow. They also allow structural integration into the vehicle itself. This is classic Tesla, solving problems at the full system level instead of accepting old trade-offs. The chemistry inside has varied with high nickel experiments and blends that cut cobalt use. The aim is to improve both cost and vehicle dynamics simultaneously. Different regions reflect different priorities in these choices. Europe often faces more regulatory pressure on supply chain ethics and carbon footprints. American efforts have sometimes emphasized high performance for trucks and longer range needs. China proved that lithium iron phosphate can dominate volume segments when scaled with local advantages. The first principle's insight is that no single chemistry wins everywhere. Range matters less if the battery lasts twice as many cycles. Cost matters more in price-sensitive markets, while longevity becomes key to proving electric vehicles can outlast gas ones. Tesla's 4680 approach tries to thread the needle through format and production innovation rather than just picking one existing recipe. The winners going forward will likely be those who treat chemistry as a practical tool matched to real customer needs rather than a marketing story. It's easy to get lost in the hype around any particular breakthrough, but the truth is the right battery is the one that makes the whole vehicle work better for the people who actually drive it every day. If you're relatively new to Tesla or just starting to pay attention as an investor, the full self-driving conversation can feel overwhelming. There is talk of neural nets, occupancy networks, end-to-end learning, and endless comparisons to other companies. Let me cut through that and explain it clearly, the way a friend would over coffee. Early autopilot hardware like HW2 used cameras and computers for basic lane keeping and adaptive cruise control. It was helpful but limited in scope. HW3 brought real neural network capability so the car could interpret camera images with artificial intelligence instead of hand-coded rules. HW4 improved the cameras, processing power, and redundancy for better performance in tough conditions like fog, heavy rain, or bright sun. One of the biggest shifts was going vision only by removing radar. Tesla argued that humans drive mostly with vision, so a well-trained neural network should be able to as well. Radar sometimes created false positives, especially in rain or when sensors got dirty. So far, the data from their supervised system suggests this bet is paying off, even if it has taken longer than many expected. Two key concepts worth understanding are the occupancy network and transformer-based planning. The occupancy network builds a living three-dimensional model of the world around the car. It understands occupied spaces and how they might change over time. The transformer architecture, similar to what powers chat tools, handles prediction and decides the safest path forward. This end-to-end approach learns directly from real driving examples instead of long lists of if-then rules that engineers have to write manually. Other companies like Waymo and Cruise take a different route with LiDAR for precise 3D point clouds plus radar and cameras. Their systems often work in limited mapped areas with remote human supervision available when needed. Tesla bets that vision scales better because cameras are inexpensive and the fleet generates huge amounts of real-world data daily. The goal is good enough sensing that improves through software across millions of vehicles worldwide instead of perfect sensing in just a few cities. For new owners or investors, the key is understanding the long-term scaling curve. Tesla still operates in supervised mode in most places, so drivers must stay attentive. The push toward unsupervised continues, but real-world edge cases and regulators keep timelines uncertain. Waymo has shown driverless operation in select cities, which proves their hardware-heavy approach works in those spots. Yet it comes at high cost and limited scale for now. Tesla's bet is that software and fleet data can solve what others address with more expensive sensors. This is why every update feels meaningful, because older cars can improve meaningfully through the air. The architecture is elegant in its simplicity, but teaching it to handle every unusual situation takes time, miles, and steady iteration. Patience is still required on the path ahead. What I appreciate about this approach is how it bets on the collective learning of the entire fleet instead of trying to engineer perfection in a lab. That doesn't make it easy, but it feels like the only way to eventually reach the scale they're aiming for. Before we go, keep an eye on how those free trials of full self-driving supervised land in the Netherlands, because that real-world feedback could shape the next wave of refinements in meaningful ways. That's your Tesla news for today. TSLA closed at $388.90, up 70 cents, 0.2%. If you found this useful, a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify really helps new listeners find the show. You can also find us on X at Tesla Shorts Time. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow. 487. This podcast is curated by Patrick, but generated using AI voice synthesis of my voice using ElevenLabs. The primary reason to do this is I unfortunately don't have the time to be consistent with generating all the content and wanted to focus on creating consistent and regular episodes for all the themes that I enjoy, and I hope others do as well.